I have good news for anyone who plays on a low-power potato PC or heaven forbid a Chromebook, because most of the games on the rest of this list are going to be either low poly or pixel games. And I'd also like to apologize to Devolver Digital for referring to them as Developer Digital by mistake in the July video. Whoops, silly me. Anyway, our first low-graphic pixel adventure takes us on the charming adventures of Great American Freedom. BroForce is an absolutely ridiculous run-and-gun where you take control of various American heroes with numerous different weapons to free prisoners of war and liberate those lands that dare stand in the way of freedom, including Vietnam, Cambodia, Arstotzka, and you do so with lots of bullets and lots more explosions. So as you play through each stage, you play through your variety of action blockbuster heroes based off of characters like Mr. T, John McClane, Neo Anderson, Agent J, the Terminator, and many others, plus the occasional civilian fighter who are, to put it one way, absolutely incompetent, and all your bros all come with their own bro-based parody name and weapons and abilities unique to their character. And yes, while some definitely felt far more powerful than others, nobody ever felt so weak that they were downright unusable for the majority of the time. And what's interesting is that you don't ever get to choose who you play as. Your character gets randomized every time you respawn or set a new prisoner free throughout the journey, so you'll rarely stick with one character for very long, which allows you to experiment with the slightly different playstyles each hero brings and halts you from maining a certain bro. On the whole, it's a fun little absurd run-and-gun that's essentially the Team America World Police video game equivalent, featuring undying patriotism and your favorite American icons, only missing the founding fathers. Of course, the game runs on its exaggerated patriotism joke very heavily throughout the time, which runs risk of getting tired if played for too long, so I'd recommend hopping on every now and then to enjoy this silly fun to its fullest, though it was a missed opportunity not to incorporate Adrian Brody in some fashion. The pun was literally right there. Well, you can't say I'm not a man of my word. I know this game was technically added on July 31st, but it basically came out in August. So, as promised, Venba is a small debut indie game from Visai Games, set around this small Indian family who have migrated to Canada and are trying to get their lives together. In the meantime, the titular Venba takes pleasure in her mother's old Indian cookbook every now and then, which is where we come in and help cook up some of the recipes from the glory days. It's a very story-driven game, with a lot of time spent reading visual novel-esque dialogue between our main characters, and player-given choices that affect the plot about as much as an entire neighborhood's worth of thoughts and prayers. But it's a well-grounded and well-paced story that offers great characterization, giving our characters very real and, for some people, relatable problems, tackling issues with family and cultural identity, which makes them very grounded and realistic people you can sympathize with. But you're probably interested in the cooking part of this game, and those sequences are actually pretty good when you get to them. The cooking portions are done almost like puzzles. Because the cookbook is so old, you're only given certain parts of the recipe, so you may end up getting certain parts of it wrong and end up starting again to fix your errors. It may involve some degree of trial and error in places, but there's always more or less enough to figure everything out on your own with what details are given. Although there's not actually that many cooking portions in the game, about 5 or 6 in total for the hour or so long story you're given. There's one later on as well where one character's gotten so refined that making dinner is suddenly about as difficult as clicking and dragging exactly where the game tells you to, with the answer sheet given straight out. I get what this is saying as part of the narrative, but it went on for a little too long for something with suddenly not much of a critical element. Maybe they could have slotted just one unfamiliar recipe for her at the end, just to spice it up a little, pun intended. I was getting an awful gut feeling that this would be the final level, but thankfully it wasn't, and while there wasn't a massive amount of cooking sequences and I wish I could have gotten more out of it, there was still enough that left me satisfied enough by the end of it. Either way, that is pretty much just a nitpick on what is a charming little short game. The art style is wonderfully done, the soundtrack is fitting and pleasant to listen to, and it's definitely a great little story about a foreign family with themes of trying to fit into a new country. That's a pleasant way to spend an hour or two. Although if you do know how to cook Indian cuisine or understand Tamil, you've basically unlocked yourself a massive cheat code.